Hi everyone. In this given problem statement of IPO, suppose LeetCode will start its own IPO soon. In order to sell at a good price of its share to the venture capital, LeetCode would like to work on some projects to increase its capital before the IPO. Since it has a limited resources, it can only finish at most K distinct project before the IPO. Help LeetCode design the best way to maximize its total capital after finishing the K distinct project. So right here, let us understand what it is saying, right? So it is saying, right, I might have W, which would be the working capital. Initially, it is 0 in this case. We have profits. So profits would be 1, 2, and 3, and capital would be 0, 1, 1. Okay. So I can complete, let's say, first or zeroth, if it's a zero based indexing, right? So I can finish the zeroth project and get profit 1, and the working capital that I would require, right, would be 0. And my current working capital would be 0. So I can complete this project. So now if I complete it, then my working capital would become 1. If my working capital become 1, right, I and the total number distinct project that I can do, right, distinct project, now it from 0 it become 1 because I completed the first project. Then right, I have two more projects, so I can choose between project, this project and this project, right? So both of them would require an capital of 1, and I already have an working capital 1. But here, right, I have to maximize the profit, so I can choose the second, in this case, let's say zeroth project, or let's say it's the first project, right? I can skip the second project and I can take the third project, which would have a value or profit of 3 and working capital 1. So right, if I add both of them, my result is going to be 4, and my working capital would become 2. One thing to understand, right, and here this could be a confusion, right? Ideal scenario, what might be happening, let's say I completed this second project, right, and it took me 1 working capital, so the working capital would be decreasing, right? But in this case, it never said that the working capital is going to decrease after completion of project. So that's the basic idea. Now the most tricky part, how to solve it in an efficient manner. And it's been written, right, we have to solve it in almost a linear time because it's a hard problem. So here, right, we can use a concept of heap, preferably max heap. So one query that might come to mind if we look into it, right, is that we know, right, if I import heap queue, right, it helps me to create a min heap, right? How will I create a max heap? So the basic idea is pretty straightforward. So it's the idea is that, let's say I can have these values, and I will do one thing, I will just create whatever value that I have, right? I will add a negative to that. So the min heap, right, would become -3, -2, and -1. And once I pop out, right, I am going to get the largest element, and then just I can add that up. So in this way, I can create a max heap by just multiplying -1 with all the values, to create a max heap. Now, if I had to solve this problem, right, there are a few things that we need to do, right? One is that we have to do a sorting. So to do a sorting, right, so we can say we can sorted, I can zip these values, which is profits, or let's say capital, and profits. which is going to give me value of 0, 1, then 1, 2, and 1, 3. Okay. So once we get it right, so we can write a loop to create our maxip. So initially, right, for the first listing project, right, our working capital was 0. So all the projects that we have, right, is going to get added out here. We have only one projects there, right? So we can add that to our maxip. And once we add that to maxip, right, let's say in this case there's only one project available, so we can pop that element out and add this to our result, which is going to be 1 for the first case. In the second case, right, we are going to add both of these values, or both of these profits, so 2 and 3, because both of them could require a working capital of 1. So now my maxip is empty because I have already popped this element out. So I'm going to add both of them. And once I add them, right, and once I pop it out, right, I'm going to get a value of -3. I can just make a positive and the result is going to be 4. That's the basic idea. I know it would be very difficult for you to understand whatever I explained in this one. But if I jump to the Python code, right, I'm pretty sure a lot of the things are going to be very, very clearer. So let us jump to the Python solution. And one more thing, right, to understand, right, to sort this function, it is going to take me in log n, and then to use a maxip, it would be k log n, because you need a k distinct element. So overall time complexity, I can say big of n log n would be the time complexity for solving this problem. Let us jump there. The first thing that is required, right, to import our heap queue. And this problem is going to be a difficult one, so I would ask you to bear with me. So the first thing, right, we are going to find the length of our profits and capital, or the total available projects that is there. So I can say a length of profits or capital, both of them are going to be same. So PROFI profits, and then I am going to say project, and it will be basically sorted, or let me just zip the values. So zip capital and profits, so capital and profits, and I can then sort those values. So the smaller one is always coming on the top, so PROFI profits equal to sorted projects. It will be also projects. Once I've done that, right, I can create my maxip. So once that is done, right, so how many distinct project that I can create? So the distinct project I can create is only k, so for underscore in range of k. And also one more thing, I need to also calculate the result. So result would be initially 0. So now I can write a while loop, and I also need to find the index of the current index we are, or let's say I can say, let me say index, which initially would be 0. So while my index is less than n, and projects also I need to find, right, in order for us to add that value to our maxip, right, we need to ensure that the capital required to complete that project, right, is less than the current working capital. So let me do that. So while index less than n and the project index, and here I'm going to pass in, because the capital is already the 0th index, right, is less than or equal to my current working capital, then I can say heap q dot heap push, and then I can pass in the max heap and my current projects index and its profit. So profit would be at first index. So that's the idea. And I also need to increment the pointer, so, or the current index, so index plus equal to 1. In case, right, my max heap is not correct, right, means it's an empty max heap, then in that case, right, we cannot pop out. So I have to break the loop. So if max if not max heap, then I can say break the loop, else w plus equal to heap q dot heap pop, and I can pass in the max heap. Also, one more thing to remember, because we're creating a max heap, right, we have to pass in the negative value. So it would be minus projects, and similarly, right, when you'd be adding it, it would be minus heap q. Let me return w, or I can say result. It's up to my wish. Let me run it and see how its result is coming. As you could see, it ran successfully. I think I do not need the result, because if I store it into the working capital, that should be fine. But I can also, means, I think in this case, right, all the working capital are starting from 0. But if there is a case where working capital would be starting from 1, right, in that case I would suggest you to create a result value. So that's all for this video. See you in the next one.